Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the last speaker and I won't be last. I won't be very long. I will show that you guys can still go watch the theater performance. So my name is Shanty Joy Fisher and I'm going to be presenting a part of my master's dissertation that was submitted last year, September 2024, and also defended at the same time. So my topic or part of the dissertation that I'll be focusing on, it's understanding the management of rock art sites and stakeholder engagement in Southern Africa with a key focus case study on the Wildebeest Kuil rock art site. For my presentation online, I will give a introduction, a brief introduction to the site, my data collection, my methodological frameworks, and also look at my site management and also look at community engagement, of which my study focused on, and also furthermore give some recommendations and conclusions of the study. I think it's very compared to the talk that we had all week long, it's really just enforcing that the study of rock art is very important in Southern Africa because it provides us valuable insights into culture, into historical practices of the Asian societies. So the picture over there, it's a picture of one of the rock art engravings at the site. You could see there's a little bit of ashes, but they'd also be communicated furthermore in the presentation. So a brief background of the site. So the two pictures over there is just within the site, the center where there's displays. So the site is just located about 15 kilometers out of this town of Kimberley, and it also into close vicinities to the San communities, namely the Kun and the Kwe groupings. Just also not a disclaimer, but just an acknowledgement that the Kun and the Kwe cultural groupings that live in the close vicinity to the site have no direct actual link. We all know that they were displaced and they are one of the closest descendants to relating to the site, but there's no direct link to them. So my study really aimed at just assessing if the current heritage management plans of this rock art site is adequate and also okay for the nature of the site, and if they also look at involving the local communities, which are the communities that live closely in the vicinities. I think we also mentioned a lot about defining local communities in that aspect. So two key questions that we're trying to answer the study was to check as to who are the stakeholders that are involved in the site. And this was done through direct participation as well, consulting of various documents that were digitally accessible to me from the archives of the McGregor Museum repositories, and also researchers that has conducted researches prior to what I am doing. We also noticed that it is important to actually look back at other rock art studies, which gives us valuable insight, and we must also not become prisoners of those sites, of those researchers, but also make reference to them a lot. The second question focused on how are the various stakeholders involved in the management of the site. So this was done through standardized questionnaires that I had. So these questionnaires were divided into two. One questionnaire was for the community members, which are the locals, and the other questionnaire was for the stakeholders, which is predominantly in the community, which are the radio stations, the NGOs, the two NGOs from both cultural groupings. So my data collection is, I have said that I did standardized interviews and also looked at interviews that were conducted or workshops that were conducted through the RAMSA program that was held in 2023, 2022, if I'm not mistaken, where there were focus groups on the site to ask how are communities involved and what's the take of communities pertaining the site, and also the questionnaires that I've compiled, and also looking at published papers. For an example, one of the key papers that I looked at in the study was a recent paper by the COSMO-ART team looking at tourism and also looking at the involvement and the engagements of the CPAs into the site, and also looking at papers that were written by Shanty Banabs in 2014 and so forth. So the methodological framework of the study was just exploring participatory methods. And as you can see there, I spent a lot of time in the archives of the McGregor Museum, where most of these artifacts, or rather documentation of these sites, are with Prof. Morris. So my analysis, I had about a sampling of 10 participants. So there you can see what were the community saying and what were the stakeholders saying based on the questionnaire. So the questionnaire had standardized questions asking what are their involvement, what do they think of the site, also looking at the age gap as to who, how many young people, and also looking at their educational capacity as to did they go to school or post education. So when you look at the site, I need to also say that one of the pioneering rock art documenters like your Fox and your George, they started this process of documenting the site roundabout in the 1870s, and roundabout in the 1800s, that is when two slab panels from the site was taken to London for exhibition. So that we have heard today, all of us, that a study that also conducted by a survey that was done by Julian, it documented, or rather geospatialized, around about 787 engravings to date on the site. So compared to last year and now, there's a bit of a change in the documentation of the site. I hope Julian will make it accessible for the McGregor Museum team. Okay, in terms of the site declaration, so the site was declared as a provincial site in 2008. So this changes the whole status quo in terms of the grading of the site. So it was a provincially accredited site, recognized site. And I think I'm too ambitious when I'm going to say that. Maybe we should go the vulnerable cave way and also apply for national accreditation. Maybe. So when I looked at the site management, one of the key theories or basis or background that I looked at in terms of the site management of the site, I looked at the traditional custodianship management systems of the site. So currently, at present, the site is managed by the McGregor Museum fully, and also staff members from there alternating to go to the site. And also it is managed, or rather governed, by the provincial status that derives from the National Heritage Council Act of 1990. However, also in terms of when we're looking, since its declaration or its inception, the Department of Sports and Arts and Culture has also been actively involved in the site. So in 2008, the site had employed around about 8 guides to the site that were paid by the Department of Science, the Department of Sports and Arts and Culture. And also there's a shop during that time which employed members from the Sen Institute. But after that, that was when there was still funding to sustain the site. But currently there's only one guide. And also, like I said, the staff of the McGregor Museum are alternating. So one of the guides there, it's Petrus, and Petrus is the one that does the tour guides and also takes everyone that goes to the site on these tour guides, and also on weekends. So the key findings of this study is that the community and community organizations are showing interest in interacting with the site. I'm saying this because of the workshops that were conducted by Ramsa on the site, and they really showed interest into the site. And also one of the key findings for me is that the site has a very outdated management plan. So if you all know that in Southern Africa, management plans are to be revised every 5 years. However, this one only has a management plan that almost dates back to 2012, and we are in 2025 or 2024 at the time of my study. The site has also been really prone to wildfires. As you also heard yesterday when we were at the Wonderwerk Cave, that we are living in a very hot, you could feel how hot it was. So the site is prone to wildfires, which puts the engravings at a very bad state. The time of my study, the engravings, the walkway to the engravings was really much damaged, as you can see there. So visitors could only go to a certain section of the engravings panels and couldn't go upwards to other engravings. And also the site has been really prone to vandalism. In this case, it's not yet stabilized to say where is the vandalism coming from. Is it coming from the communities or people from, which is Kimberley, 15 kilometers away? So, and that also puts the museum at the center at very a downfall, because a lot of the last time when it was vandalized, many equipments were stolen, valuing a lot of money. So that also put the site at a very downfall to be fully operational, or rather open fully to the public and also those tourists that come to the site. So I've had a couple of engagements with the NGOs and also the community members. Mr. Timekeeper, you will let me know. Thank you. In terms of the NGOs, they have a notion that they are partly only involved into the site. But discussions that I've had with the museum and Prof. Morris is that the McGregor Museum is really trying its utmost best to involve these communities. So if they have events also at the site, they are not paying. So, but that's a different narrative between what the community NGOs feels and what the museum is saying. There's also different dynamics that are associated to the CPAs in the communities that we explored, and also the community engagement that I mentioned with the museum. So by far, the conclusions that I came towards brought me to understanding that because the study that I was doing looked at the dynamics of management of prehistoric rock art sites. The observation derived from the data that I had collected, and the management of these rock art sites would be remain key priority. By also looking at the data that I've collected, the management in South Africa, especially when you looking at Wildebeest Kuil, it requires really well coordinated and multidisciplinary approach that would involve bypassing the legal protection, scientific research, and also sustainable tourism practices that will really offer inclusivity to the community. Through these efforts, the Wildebeest rock art site needs to preserve its rich rock art history for future generations, and also allowing that the current generation to appreciate and learn from these artworks. Another recommendation was looking towards a sustainable rock art management model strategy that would be proposed to be anchored in the following bases, which were written by guidelines from Jenner Deacon in 97, which anchored educational, research, touristic, and digitization. And also, I'm going to continue mentioning this, that the renewal of the current management plan to actually fit the contemporary status quo. I did mention that, and also to also more be invested into digital archiving, digital preservation of the site. So I got new pictures. So this is how the Wildebeest Kuil looks now. So the walkway has been prepared. It's a year later to my study. So you can see that the walkway it's repaired. So tourists can now go up there. But prior to that, they can only go India. I have 5 minutes left, so the 5 minutes I'm going to use to shine and thank everyone, the COSMO-ART team, Dr. Melanie Duval, Dr. Lorenzo Pinto, the museum staff at Wildebeest Kuil, and also a special thanks to Pietrus for always allowing me to go to the site, the Plaatfontein community, Prof. Morris, the archaeologist Abby, Mayor Masiteng from SPU, and also Ugo. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shanty. Yeah, before just giving the mic to the floor, maybe, I don't know, David, would you like to say any word about it? Or because David is the manager of Wildebeest Kuil, so if you want. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm not the manager. I was at one point. The site has gone through a very complicated history with various levels of community engagement. And some of the things that have upset some of the engagement that we had was the death of certain prominent people we were working with, COVID, but certainly the management plan ought to have been upgraded in 5 years of 2012. Yeah, I think it's a very complex story. But thank you very much for what you've done, bringing out those features in your talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your talk. So you have given so just for disclosure, I have also done work at Wildebeest Kuil and Plaatfontein. And yeah, so you've given us a lot of information, but I feel there's a lot to be unpacked. And this maybe speaks a bit to what David refers to as well. So yeah, you gave us a lot of information, and it might just be because it's the presentation, but I wonder to what extent are you unpacking all that information in your master's? Why hasn't the management plan been redone? Who would do the management plan? Where will the money come from that? But more so, I wanted to speak about, you mentioned that, that there's a discrepancy on what community members are saying about things and what McGregor Museum is saying about things. What are the discrepancies? Because you didn't really tell us. But what I'm really interested in is when you worked with the community, who you spoke to in the community, how did you decide who you were going to speak to? How many times did you speak to them? And I bring this up because when we did our workshops, it's not uncommon for people to tell you one thing and then tell you something else. So for example, we did photo voice workshops. And initially the people who came said they'd never done photo voice workshops. But over the course of 2 days, it turned out 2 of them had done photo voice workshops before. And likewise, we did participatory workshops, grassroots comics, body mapping workshops, and we took people along to Wildebeest Kuil. And people were all telling us they'd never been to Wildebeest Kuil. But then it turned out that actually quite a lot of them had been there at other workshops. So I just wonder to what extent, how long did you engage with people? How did you choose the people? Because if you go through the NGO and they refer people to you, obviously you get a different answer for if you just walk through the community, knock on doors and randomly pick people. So yeah, if you could elaborate a bit more on that.
So yes, I think I've had an ample amount of time with communities actually prior to the Ramsar as well, because I did one of my honors dissertation was on the community. So I actually had a linkage or already built a relationship, even though it was during COVID, through Prof. Morris and Dr. Pintu. So the reason why I picked those people is that there was a lot of engagements happening with them during the Ramsar workshops, and also after the Ramsar workshops, I also had came back and engaged them, and I think one of the NGO guys, both from both the Kun and the Kwe, had taken me through the through the community at the time when I came, and also invited one of the members of the community to the site. In that picture that you've seen, it's just two pictures that I've loaded, but there were many more also in the dissertation. And also looking at the discrepancies, I like Prof. Morris had indicated that they're really a troubled community and a very complex community. So in terms of engaging with them, it's a win-win situation because remember they come from a very displaced of background. So they actually come from Angola, and the land that they're staying in, they only attained in 94. And also the land, which is the Wildebeest Kuil, it's the museum that is custodian of it, but they do have access to it. Like you say that they will say something else and change their minds. And also we need to acknowledge that when you go to Plaatfontein, you would see the living conditions. You'd see how they are living. So it's a given that they will be very complex because they're also just trying to protect themselves. However, I think the museum thus far has worked very close with them, and also with the NGOs. You don't want to actually be more reliant onto them because they might be representing the communities and they might not be representing the interest of the communities. So these NGOs also, because they are the ones that mostly engage with the museum. So I think the complexities and the dynamics are still to be unpacked. And also the reason why the management plan has not been revised. I never got to that question, but by speaking to Prof. Morris and having this engagements with him, I made out, I might be wrong, that it might be because of museums in South Africa are really now becoming, like Nicholas said, they're becoming really downgraded where they don't receive ample of funding to these, to do museum. I mean, most of the works that have been repairs that have been done at Wildebeest Kuil and also at Wonderwerk were funded by the Department of Tourism. So I'm assuming it's a financial constraint and also a level of expertise that needs to be ventured into. I mean, Prof. Morris is no longer there, so. There's some.
Yes. I just have had a question and maybe one comment. If I follow well, you wrote or you said that you used participatory approaches. So I wanted to hear more about that, what you use participatory approaches. And the other thing, and I think it really joined what was just said now by Jolly Grant, I also would like to unpack this idea of a community interest for Wildebeest Kuil. Well, I also worked in Plaatfontein, and maybe some of you saw the exhibition there. And actually, most of the people, the youth I worked with, they never mention the presence of Wildebeest Kuil rock art site, neither as part of their heritage or part of the important places for them. So I think it's always this notion of community that tends to really blur the lines and invisibilize the different positions within the communities. And yes, I think it's a quite good example here of that we must be careful with the use of this word.
Leila, can you repeat the first question? Just highlight it again.
I just wanted to hear what kind of participatory approaches you used.
So it was actually an infused participatory method where I looked at the knowledges from the communities, what they know, and also getting them together to ask what they do, what they know collectively about the site. And as you say that you've also worked there, so they will tell you something else and they will tell you something else. So that's what I explored. And also the unpacking part, I think if I have to further my studies and maybe to PhD level, I would probably explore more and also have a distinct as to who are the local communities, and also maybe clearly define what community entails in terms of these sites.